areas. Essentially, what this bill would allow for are for fixed wireless providers to also be eligible for certain grants across the state to bring broadband to areas of the state that really struggle to get access to broadband, especially of concern right now when many folks and kids are trying to access the internet from home in ways in which and in volumes in which they haven't had to historically or in the past. Additionally, it also calls for some updating to maps so that we can have an accurate idea of where and what types of broadband are available throughout the state. So, Mr. Chair, with your permission, I'd love to have our testifier, Ms. Boroff, speak to this issue in more detail.
And
welcome to our committee, Ms. Boroff. Identify yourself for the record, and you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Anna Boroff, and I am the Executive Director of the Minnesota Cable Communications Association. So good afternoon, and thank you, Senator Duckworth, for bringing forward this bill. We share your goal of ensuring all Minnesotans have access to high-quality broadband. Minnesota Cable's members have leveraged the state border-to-border broadband grant program to reach unserved areas of Minnesota. The grants have helped leverage the billions in private capital investments by providers like my members to expand their networks across Minnesota. So Minnesota Cable members use a variety of technologies to reach customers: fiber, hybrid, fiber coax, and fixed wireless. Fixed wireless is provided by Midco in my association. So Midco received CAF2 federal funds to build fixed wireless to 7,401 locations in Minnesota. And the speeds being offered by their fixed wireless technology will soon be at 100/20 in all of these areas and allow Midco to continue edging out their current fiber network to serve remote and rural areas. This investment was a first step in a Midco expansion plan, and Midco will use this infrastructure over the next years to continue expanding their service to more communities in Minnesota. The language in Senate File 1536 would allow for fixed wireless broadband to be eligible for a state broadband grant. If wireless can meet the qualifications for the program, speed, scalability, then this technology could be a cost-effective solution for many areas of our state by bringing down the cost of broadband, thus expanding the reach of the broadband grant program and reaching more Minnesotans faster. The bill also requires the Office of Broadband to collect broadband deployment data on all types of technologies. Minnesota Cable believes that government programs to connect Minnesotans should be technology neutral, and the state program right now is basically limited to wireline providers. And what is being counted or not counted as meeting state speed goals is confusing at best when trying to assess our progress towards the state speed goals. Minnesota only has 157,000 unserved households left to reach the state's 2022 speed goal and 256,000 households left towards the 2026 goal. That means that we are getting very close to those numbers, but these numbers only count wireline connections. So this understates the availability of broadband that meet those state speed goals because wireless is not counted. And if wireless is eligible for broadband grant funding as it is in this bill, then the services they provide with grant funding should be mapped and counted towards the state broadband goals. So thank you for bringing forward the conversation on whether wireless broadband counts towards the state broadband goals, specifically including wireless in the state's data, as Senator Duckworth does in his bill, makes sense, especially as technology continues to advance. Mr. Chair and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to share Minnesota Cable's thoughts on these topics, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Boroff. Members, questions, and just to acknowledge, thank you, Angie Dickinson from the Director of the Office of Broadband has joined our committee just as a resource. Members, if there's any questions. My understanding is that you don't have any prepared testimony, but I just wanted to acknowledge and thank you for joining us and being a part of this committee. Senator Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Boroff, by adding fixed wireless to the bill, how big of an increase will that add to the state's ability to get broadband? And maybe you mentioned it and I didn't catch it.
Ms. Boroff.
Mr. Chair, Senator Anderson, in terms of how many households would then be added to the numbers of served households, I do not know. Actually, the Office of Broadband might have a better idea because, they do some tracking of that. They might have an idea of how that would change the numbers of served Minnesotans.
That would be great if Ms. Dickinson could offer some insight.
Very good. Senator Anderson. Ms. Dickinson, to Senator Anderson's question, if you have additional insight.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Anderson. Our data from our data collection last year on the availability of broadband that is fixed. So that would include fixed wireless, all the wireline access. It wouldn't include mobile or cellular broadband availability, but the fixed non-mobile. For our 2022 speed goal of the 25x3 access, we show that about 97% of households statewide would have that access. And in our rural areas, that would be 94%. Statewide, that would be an estimated total of about 54,000 households.
So, Mr. Chair.
Senator Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Dickinson, what gets us to 100%?
Ms. Dickinson.
What gets us to 100% is a combination of factors. It's definitely building out in the unserved areas, and it's also a closer look at the reliability of the coverage data that we are receiving for some of the fixed wireless providers. At the federal level, the FCC is proposing, and they're being required to update their mapping methodologies, and I'm hopeful through their work in consultation with the industry and the broadband providers that we could get some better data. Not all fixed wireless providers, but in some cases, the coverage that they are able to deliver is overstated.
Okay.
Senator Anderson, any follow-up?
No, that I appreciate that. It's a long road, I think. Maybe not.
Senator Frentz.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Duckworth, for bringing the bill forward. Obviously, this is one of our priorities as a legislature this year. I think my question is for Ms. Dickinson, but if Ms. Boroff wants to try, Ms. Dickinson, thanks for attending. I'll give it to you. The question first. Does the Office of Broadband Development have, the funding and staff necessary to complete the mapping requirements in this bill? Obviously, we see the value of the mapping. Just want to ask on the record what your thoughts are about whether you've got the staff and the ability to do it. Thank you.
Ms. Dickinson.
Certainly more funding would help us do, Mr. Chair and Senator Frentz, certainly more funding and additional staff would be helpful in that regard. Again, also looking at what's happening at the federal level. So I'm not at this point ready to specifically ask for what that level of assistance might be. I said we have been doing data collection with the state's broadband providers for many years now. That has been successful. We are looking at ways that we could improve that data collection and perhaps do a little bit more validation in the field in areas where we are hearing from consumers, where they look at our broadband maps, and we do have fixed wireless coverage on our state broadband map that's on our website. And a typical interaction with the consumer would be, your map is showing I can get this service here and it's not available. And in some of those circumstances where our funding allows, we have our vendor Connected Nation to do some field validation for us to find out what's actually available on the ground there.
Senator Frentz, any follow-up?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I could, to that point, Ms. Dickinson, then, how does this bill deal with potential over-reporting of the coverage areas for fixed wireless?
Ms. Dickinson.
Senator Westrom, Senator Frentz, I can't speak to how the bill may address that. What I will tell you is what we do in the office today with our program, the way it exists today. In a grant round, if we receive an application for an area that appears to be served by fixed wireless coverage, we take a closer look at what's going on there. Typically, in my experience, both here and in Wisconsin, if an area is well served by whatever technology that may be, we typically don't see applications for grant funding for those communities. It's the communities where the coverage doesn't exist or is over-reported where we typically see the requests from communities for better service.
Ms. Dickinson, is the opposite exist potentially as well, or do you know if it does, where maybe the map doesn't show an area having coverage yet maybe it does?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I missed the first part of your question.
But I'm just wondering if you in the office experience the opposite at all, where the map, your example was that the map shows it has service and customers or consumers call and say they don't have service. Do you have some areas, do you think, that don't show service, that maybe service doesn't exist?
That could definitely be possible where perhaps there was a new provider or in some cases simply a mapping error on the coverage that was reported by a provider.
Very good. Senator Frentz, I don't know if you had additional cover-up, but a follow-up. I was following up on your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I think you got to the spirit of it, which is the more accurate our mapping, the better we'll be able to do to provide broadband for everybody. I want to, again, thank Senator Duckworth for bringing it forward, Ms. Boroff for her testimony, Ms. Dickinson. You know, I think fixed wireless is obviously making inroads on reliability. That's something I think this committee has to accept. That's the testimony we've had. There's no question about it. It's tougher to say how it affects different areas, and we could get into topography and line of sight. I think that I'll spare us all for now, but I appreciate the bill, looking forward to supporting it, and I hope we do big things in rural broadband as a legislature this year. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Goggin?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm just curious, you know, with this fixed wireless, Ms. Boroff or Ms. Dickinson could answer it. What do you think the future demand is for implementing this type of equipment out in the field, you know, compared to fiber optic and such as that?
Ms. Boroff, maybe I'll start with you.
Mr. Chair, Senator Goggin, that's a great question. Fixed wireless is one tool in the toolbox. So there are geographical, you know, constraints, those types of considerations. We wouldn't deploy a network in an area where it doesn't make sense, right? But for areas where it does make sense, I think the demand could be, I mean, the opportunities to expand to some areas that might be really tough and not cost effective to get to otherwise. It's really hard to put fiber through granite, for example. I mean, you can see some opportunities to getting to some of these really difficult areas to serve, or at least having one more tool in the toolbox. So I don't know what the exact number of areas we might consider in the future to expand fixed wireless to. But there's definitely areas of the state that have seen really great success with this type of technology.
Any follow-up, Senator Goggin?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thank you. This is probably for Ms. Dickinson. Is the deed, are you at Broadband getting a lot of requests for implementation of fixed wireless? Have you had a lot of inquiries from developers to do that? Just curious.
Ms. Dickinson?
Mr. Chair, Senator Goggin, no, we haven't. The requests that typically come our way are, please help us. We don't have service, or we don't have very good service. So the folks contacting our office typically aren't asking for a specific type of technology or looking for connectivity. And I agree. And this state has been technology neutral, and I recommend that we keep that focus on the speeds, focus on getting folks connected with the quality of broadband service they need to live and thrive in today's economy. And whether that's fiber or cable or fixed wireless or satellite, we've got to keep our minds open to that possibility. The other piece of that, in my mind, is that it really is a decision at the local level. From my experience, it's the community working together with the broadband provider to agree on the technology that will work best for them. And as others have said here today, the topography in a region can certainly dictate what type of technology may or may not work there. So it's very much a decision that requires some local input and support.
Mr. Chair, just real quick, yeah, I agree with you, Ms. Dickinson. We need to be technology neutral so that we can keep the innovation going, and also, you know, have the tools in the toolbox, as Ms. Boroff said, to help get this implemented as rapidly as we possibly can. And I'll just share a little short story with a gentleman in my district. He's an engineer, deals with very large files. But he and his neighbors, they got fixed wireless in their area, and he says it's working great for him. So just a little operating experience from constituents. So thank you.
And we'll end on that note from an engineer. So Senator Duckworth, final comments, and then we'll lay the bill over.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll be brief. And funny enough, to Senator Goggins' point, the very concept or idea of this bill came from a constituent of mine as well when I was out door knocking. He pulled me aside and told me what the issue was and proposed some solutions, and here we are with a bill that hopefully we'll get to it. So I would agree. The state being technology neutral is important, especially in terms of innovation. This bill does that by saying fixed wireless is an additional option that ensures that it's going to be technology neutral. Additionally, it allows those additional resources and tools to be available to our local governments when they're deciding how they want to bring broadband to their communities and to their residents. Whether it's fixed or non-fixed, well, they have the ability to discuss all of the options, which I think all of us would want, and I think that best serves our constituents. I think most of them don't care how they get broadband, so long as we get it to them as quickly as possible and as cost effectively as possible. I think this bill will allow them to do that. To Senator Anderson's point, it could be a long road ahead of us, but this allows us, I think, to hopefully speed things up a little bit where we can. In terms of mapping and accuracy, Senator Frentz made a great point, good questions, and I appreciate them. I think this bill helps resolve both over and under reporting by requiring an annual map with data reflecting all broadband delivery technologies and verifying its accuracy through on-the-ground testing. So if we're worried about our maps and how accurate they are, well, that's why this bill says we should be doing it annually in regards to all technologies that will be delivering broadband. So I appreciate the discussion and your time, Mr. Chair. I think it is a bill that will really bring a lot more options and availability to our residents all across the state and help them access broadband during a time in which it's very, very important to folks both working at home and trying to do some schooling at home as well. So thank you all for your time.
Very good. Thank you, Senator Duckworth, and members lay the bill over for possible inclusion. Next, we have